couple fundamental principles. Number one, at the Heritage Foundation, we strongly believe in federalism. There should be local control, local autonomy in questions such as zoning, etc. We also very strongly, obviously, believe in freedom of religion. Nobody questions that. But what I think in our gut we feel and we believe very strongly is that respect for other faith traditions has to be mutual. We do respect other faith traditions, but we expect other faith traditions to respect ours and others as well. It seems to me that if the organizers of the Cordoba scheme in New York really want to bring people together, that there are plenty of alternative sites in Lower Manhattan, that this is something that's splitting a community apart. It's not a very sensible way to act in terms, again, of showing concern, of bringing us together. They should consider whether there aren't less controversial ways to bring about that religious harmony they say they want. I mean, this is not just a random site in Lower Manhattan. I've been to Ground Zero a number of times with friends, with officials in New York. I know how it is considered sacred ground, and I think it's a very, very bad call on their part.
We'll take a question from one of our Facebook viewers. Joe Mezzanini of upstate New York asks, how do you possibly get America back on track when the president and those who control Congress are so off track?
Well, we're very optimistic at Heritage, and we also believe that the American people, if you look at the polls the last 18 months or so, have had a chance to look at and digest a lot of the ideas and the policies that have been foisted on us by this administration and the leadership in the House and the Senate. And if you look at the polls, there's been a rightward tilt to the American people on a whole range of issues. America's always been somewhat right of center, and it was even right of center on Election Day 2008, believe it or not, if you read the exit polls. What's happened since then is a several more degree rightward tilt. As people have seen the spending and they've seen the reports about the debt, they've seen the way the stimulus plan has worked or not worked, the intervention in private firms, putting unions ahead of creditors for in bankruptcy situations like they did with Chrysler. A whole range of these exposures to these kinds of policies, I think, has made America more receptive to the kind of ideas that are in our report. So, you know, our optimism is unbounded. My expectation is that come January, the kind of people that will be in Congress with the congressional voting cards will look a lot different and vote a lot differently than the ones there today. And my guess is we'll see a lot of them calling us up and asking for some briefings and some explanations of how to take these ideas and develop them even more.
Heritage Foundation launched Solutions for America today. In the beginning of this book or booklet, you talk about changing the course of America. What's wrong with the current course?
A lot of things, unfortunately. When it comes to our fiscal side, for example, we are on a trajectory to be basically like Greece or any of the countries in Europe that are on the edge right now. Our obligations far exceed our ability to pay them. Our promises to people who are seniors, who are about to become seniors, are really not something we can meet in the long run. We have to fundamentally overhaul the way we deal with things like retirement and health care, especially for older people. And we also have to overhaul the way we interact with our low-income, poor Americans. We have a welfare state now that, believe it or not, is $1 trillion a year that goes out under 71 different programs. It doesn't do much good for folks. It doesn't help them get out of poverty, yet it's growing at almost a double-digit rate of increase, and that has to end. So we have to get our hands around all these different parts of our budget and all these different kinds of commitments and promises the federal government has made to people not just who are poor, but also people in the middle class, and rein them in and say, well, look, the party is over. We can't do this any longer. We have to start to calibrate what government does according to what reasonable amount of revenue we can get from taxpayers without hurting the economy. So, and the other thing we have to do is get our tax code fixed. Our corporate tax rate is the second highest in the industrial world. It's a very strong disincentive for companies to do business. And we have a tax system that's so complex and wrought with all kinds of special interest loopholes that people don't really understand what their burden is going to be when they have to pay taxes. So we have to clear that up, give some certainty to the businesses out there, to individuals who want to invest, and reward investment, reward hard work, require work, for example, in more welfare programs than is the case today, and basically kind of instill across the board the core American values into our law. I mean, we've lost sight of that over the years, whether it's on the moral side, whether it's on the fiscal side, whether it's on the way people who are self-reliant are being asked and told that they can be supplicants to the welfare state, even if they're in the middle class. Now, that kind of thinking has to come to an end, and we have to right-size the government in so many different ways.
Well, how did we get here?
Well, we got here in a number of ways. For example, if you go back and look at the creation of some of these big entitlement programs like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, no one ever envisioned that they would grow and become such a burden like they've become. And over the years, indeed, a number of these programs, Medicare and Medicaid in particular, Congress has incrementally increased and added benefits and added new populations who are eligible for the benefits, little by little, so that over time, what started out to be a fairly modest sounding program has evolved into a real fiscal monster. And so in some cases, you can't go back and look at one individual member of Congress who said, I have an idea, and I'm going to push it through come hell or high water and get it enacted that will break this country's fiscal back. No, it happens very gradually. It's the collective work of many different Congresses over decades, and there's been no break. The political system has rewarded this kind of lawmaking. Voters haven't kicked enough people out when they do it because the effects are in the late in many cases, and you don't see them until decades later.
There are a lot of policy prescriptions or ideas in this program. Do you have one or two or three that are maybe the highlights or the most important, the ones to focus on right now?
Sure. I mean, the two big ones I would point to, I kind of alluded to earlier. We have to just basically say goodbye and the entitlement state. And that includes not just the big three, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, but we also have to end the entitlement status of the 71 means-tested welfare programs. We have to put them on a budget. We have to require Congress to look at them every year or every few years if necessary to make sure that they're going on the right course, the right trajectory. Right now, all those programs, trillions of dollars of spending, are on automatic pilot. Congress says, we have no control over it, but they really should. And it should be part of the normal budgeting process. It's what any sound business would do, and we need to do that at the federal level. Some other ideas include federalism. If you look at areas like transportation policy, education policy, the Medicaid program again, other areas of healthcare, and even in areas of homeland security, the federal role has far, far transcended what the founders would ever have envisioned. And the states have sunk back into the background, and now their role in Washington is really nothing more than being supplicants for welfare. They come in and they put their hand out and they want to get a higher federal match on some program, more federal money for what they are going to be doing. And the federal power has become such that the states now are really just little supplicants to what the federal government does. That has to end. And we propose a series of ways in which to give the states a greater role in fashioning and determining policy in those areas. So you ought not to have your kids' education determined by some nameless, faceless bureaucrat in some distant office in Washington. You ought to have the government closer to the people. They'll make better decisions, and they'll be able to make decisions that reflect local needs and local conditions. Right now, the one-size-fits-all nature of what Washington does precludes that.